Are you living life or is life living you, right? Who is really in control here? Are you very clear and focused on how you're using your most valuable asset? Or are you letting other people use it on your behalf? And of course, what we're talking about is time management. Welcome to Life of a CISO. I'm Dr. Eric Cole, your host, and we'll be taking you on a journey each week on what it takes to be a CISO and what are solutions that you can implement today if you are currently a Chief Information Security Officer or if you want to be one in the future. This is Life of a CISO. Welcome, 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 welcome. You know what time it is. We need some drums in here, or drum rolls. You know what time it is. It's time for Life of a CISO with yours truly. Dr. E is in the house. What I really want to focus in on this episode is helping you get very clear about how are you using your most valuable asset. Because when I talk to most CISOs or most security engineers or most executives, I hear a similar thing, which is, Eric, I feel like I wake up in the morning, I roll over, I check my phone, and crisis, fire, crisis, and I end up spending the whole day just putting out fires. And then I go to bed with a clear plan of what I want to do tomorrow, and the same thing happens. And I'm sure some of you can relate. Where are you living life or is life living you, right? Who is really in control here? Are you very clear and focused on how you're using your most valuable asset? Or are you letting other people use it on your behalf? And of course, what we're talking about is time management. Time is the most valuable asset. It's not money. It's not gold. Here's why. You can always make more money. You can always find more gold. But you cannot, no matter what you do, no matter what you've tried, I guarantee this to you, my friends, I guarantee you cannot manufacture time. You cannot create more time. You cannot create less time. Everybody on the planet gets 24 hours in a day. Everybody gets 60 minutes in an hour, and everybody gets 60 seconds in a minute. There's no exceptions. Nobody, the brilliant best minds, we have been able to do amazing things, put people on the moon, create the internet, cellular technology, all this amazing stuff, yet nobody to date, and nobody in the future is ever going to be able to figure out how to manufacture time. Therefore, if you want to win in this game of life, if you want to win in this game called being a Chief Information Security Officer, then you have to master the skill of time management. You have to control how you use your time. You have to control how you're scheduling your time. And I always love when we get this conversation because you go, but Eric, you don't understand. I'm at work, fires come up, these things have to be done. If I don't do them, right, the business will melt down or the world will cease to exist. And the question is that really true? What if you were on vacation? What if you had a doctor's appointment? What if you were rushed to the hospital with a medical condition? Guess what? Whatever you think that fire is, you wouldn't be able to do it. And guess what? I am very positive that the world will continue. I'm very positive the business will continue. So the issue is we tend to give way too much credit to other people's poor planning, because that's what a crisis is. A crisis or a firefight or anything like that where somebody calls you up and you're like, you have to handle this now, is 95% of the time poor planning on the part of somebody else. They didn't plan correctly. They didn't get it done. So now their problem becomes your problem. Now, the only slight exception to this that we do sort of have to be careful of when you're talking about cyber security is in the area of breaches. I would probably agree with you that if a breach, if an attack, if a compromise, ransomware, anything like that happens against the organization, it probably does require your time. It wasn't necessarily poor planning, right? Because it happened, and it's probably going to require you to temporarily postpone other things to focus on that. But here's the reality. If those are happening daily, weekly, or either monthly, you got a bigger problem, right? Yes, breaches do happen. We've talked about the concept of 100% security doesn't exist, which means any functional network, any functional business is going to have vulnerabilities, it's going to have exposures, it's going to have incidents, it's going to have breaches. That's a reality. But it shouldn't be happening daily, weekly, monthly. So those are a slightly different category. Yes, when a breach occurs and you're the CISO, you're going to have to sort of business as usual, clear your calendar, potentially cancel personal events and focus in on that. But like I said, that should not be how you operate on a daily basis. Unfortunately, that's how most CISOs do. Most CISOs operate every single day as if there's a crisis, as if there's a data breach that's happening, and they're not getting anything done. So we need to start to scale back and say, what does a day in the life of a CISO really look like? Now, the reality is, depending on your business and the maturity of the security, firefighting might be the unfortunate run book of how you operate. In a lot of companies where there's not formal security processes, there's not formal security business plans in place and what you're going to do and project management and all those other things, a lot of it is just sort of, okay, well, whatever the hot thing is, let's just sort of keep the fires out. But here's the problem. It's a vicious cycle that you'll never win. Because if you're always putting out fires, you'll never have time to plan. If you never have time to plan, you'll never have time to fix the issues that are causing the fires. And if you never have time to fix the issues that are causing the fires will continue to burn. So the reality is, if you are spending all day, every day, not in control of your time, if you're spending all day, every day putting out fires, the solution you might not like, it probably goes against every grain in your body of how you typically want to operate. But the reality is this: you're going to have to let some fires burn. Because if you don't allocate a chunk of time every day to fixing the problems that are causing the fires, you'll never get ahead of the fires. So that's really the game plan. And the trick is this: what is the most predictable way to cut down a tree? If there is a tree in your backyard and you want to cut it down, what is the most predictable way of doing it? The most predictable way of doing it is this: every day you wake up, you sharpen the axe, and when you're in full energy and full power, you take 10 really good swings at that tree. So every morning you wake up, you got a sharp axe, you're energized, you have your breakfast, you have your cup of coffee, you are just on fire and full energy, and you just take that axe and bam, 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 bam. Very efficient. Put the axe down, go on your day. If I do that every single day, what has to happen? What is a guarantee that eventually will happen? The tree will fall down. Now, depending on the size of the tree and other factors, it could take a month, it could take a quarter, it could take a year, it could take 2 years. But the reality is we know for a fact, if we do that, if we consistently put focused attention against a problem on a regular basis, we will eventually solve that problem. Now, what's the issue? Most people, how do they cut down a tree? If they want to cut down a tree, they're going to go in and they're going to be like, okay, this Saturday, I'm chopping down the tree. So they clear their schedule for Saturday, they get the axe, they wake up, have a good breakfast, and they start swinging the axe against the tree. Now, what happens after 30, 40 minutes? You start to get a little tired. So the swings aren't as efficient. You're not really hitting it as good as you did in the beginning, so your efficiency goes down. Then after 2 or 3 hours, your efficiency is really, really low because you're so tired you can barely swing the axe. You're almost not even making any forward progress at that point, but you're pushing through because you're determined. And then you get to 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you have zero energy left, you can't even lift your arms, and you're like, damn, that tree's never going to chop down. And then that tree stays in that half or quarter cut state for the next 10 years. That's how most people approach problems. They want to go the all-in surge method and let's just fix it once and be done. Now, yes, some problems you put 4 or 5 hours in, you can solve it. Most problems require a lot more time, energy, and effort. And the trick to being an effective CISO is consistent, applied action on a regular basis over a long period of time. If you can learn that one skill, your efficiency and effectiveness as a chief information security officer goes through the roof. Because now all of a sudden, you are scheduling out the time. When I work with one-on-one clients, the first thing I always do is have a 15, 20-minute conversation with them. And the conversation usually goes like this, but Eric, you don't understand. This is how things have always been done. I've just come to recognize no matter what I want to do, no matter what I plan, no matter what I accomplish, when I get to work in the morning, it's just going to be firefighting until 7 p.m. at night and I go home. That's just the reality of the situation. And I look at them and go, that's the reality that you created. Are you willing to create a new reality? And I've had times where I have clients where they look at me and go, no, Eric, you don't understand. This is the reality. And I look at them and say, no, you don't understand. It's your reality that you created and you can change it at any time. Are you willing to change your reality? And I will be honest with you. If I ask that question 3 times, are you willing to change your reality? And I consistently get no, and pushback. I say, have a nice day, I refund your money, and I fire you as a client. Because the reality is this. If you're not willing to change, and you're not willing to learn, and you're not willing to be coached, you're wasting my time, and I'm wasting yours. So the first decision is, are you willing to change? Are you willing to accept the fact that reality isn't reality? The current life that you're living right now is not real. It's the one you created. You created this current life. And you can create a different life or you can continue to live this current life. And until you're willing to accept the fact that you need to change, you need to change and start looking at the world differently and live world differently, we're never going to make forward progress. I know people always struggle if they're new to this, but here's the reality. Do the research on this. If you look at your senses, which basically creates your life, your eyes, your ears, your nose, your mouth, your fingers are basically creating your reality based on what you're seeing, what you're processing, and what you're bringing in. And do you realize at any moment there are millions of different things you can bring in, and your mind, based on your thoughts and beliefs and identity, are bringing in a very small subset of what's actually happening that's aligning with that belief structure. So if you change your thoughts and beliefs, you change how you're processing the world around you, and you actually change what you perceive and what you see, and you actually change or shift your entire life. Have you ever been in a situation where 2 or 3 people are observing the same exact thing and they walk away with a completely different perspective? Completely different perspective. Or you've gone in and you've been in a room or you observe something and somebody's like, so what did you think of X? And you're like, there was an X in there. And you go back and sure enough it was. You just didn't process it because it didn't align with your current reality. So this is, I know we're getting a little outside of CISO and a little more into mindset, but it's a thing you need to understand. Are you willing to change? Are you willing to try something new? And if they say yes, then I go to them and I say, let me ask you a question. What if you were only able to work 4 hours a day? Let's say something happened where either a family member, I don't want to wish anything negative on anybody, but let's just say some scenario happened where you are only able to work 4 hours a day. You just can't work those other 4 hours. What would happen? Less fires would get put out, but guess what? The company would still survive. So the reality is, if you were only able to spend 4 hours a day instead of 10 hours a day on firefighting, things would still get done. And let me ask you this, what if revenue dropped at your company and your current team got cut in half? So now instead of having 6 people, you only have 3 people. What would happen to the firefighting? It would just be less firefighting. What would happen to the fires you're not dealing with? They would figure themselves out. The reality is, if instead of spending 10 hours a day with 6 people putting out fires, you only spent 4 hours a day with 3 people, all of a sudden the fire load would adjust and the company would still survive. The company would still work. It's not going to implode. It's just you have less time. And here's the other reality. You're spending 10 hours a day fighting fires. If you had 15 hours, guess what? The fires would expand to consume 15 hours. Whatever time and resources you give a problem, it will figure out how to consume it. And it will figure out how to use it. So what I start with is, I don't go in and say, ignore all the fires. I don't go in and say, you're going to tell everybody no and never ever put out a fire for the rest of your life, because that's not really practical. That's not going to scale, and that will probably get you fired. But what I do is, let's start off by cutting it in half. So instead of 10 hours and 6 people of your team, let's only go in and spend 4 hours and 3 people. Now, you have 4 hours a day and 3 people every single day to be proactive, to work on fixing the problem so that the fires don't happen and happen with less frequency. And what you'll find is, when I do this with companies, something magically happens. After 4 or 5 months, where they're now spending half their time preventing and being proactive, all of a sudden they come to me and go, Eric, we only have to spend 1 or 2 hours a day on fires. I'm actually able to spend more time on being proactive and preventive, because guess what? The fires now go away because you're fixing the problems. And we get a lot of our clients to the point where there's very few fires because everything is being properly managed and handled and proactive. But how do you do that? By scheduling out your day. Make your day non-negotiable. Let me ask you a question. If you had a doctor's appointment, if you had a critical meeting at your kid's school, if you had a meeting with the CEO of your company, would you miss those meetings? Heck no. Doesn't matter the fires that are burning. You could be in the middle of a big fire, but if you had an 11 o'clock doctor's appointment or you had a 2 p.m. meeting with the CEO, guess what? You would make those meetings. So the reality is, you know how to do time management. Now we just need to scale it for your entire day. And you need to respect your time as much as anybody else's. If you have a 3 p.m. schedule with yourself to work on a business plan, that needs to be taken just as seriously as a 10 a.m. doctor's appointment or a 2 p.m. meeting with the CEO. If it's on your calendar, it's non-negotiable. You do not move it. And this is the second thing I do when I'm working with new clients. Once I can get them to agree that change must happen and change begins with them, the next thing I do is I say, show me your calendar. Successful, highly productive people, when you look at their calendar for the next week, the next month, and the next year, it is almost fully booked. It is almost fully scheduled. And for people that are not used to this, when I bring this up to them, they go, Eric, that sounds exhausting. Going in and having your entire day schedule, that's crazy. Like for the next week or month, so I wake up and every hour of every day, there's something scheduled that I need to do and focus on. That sounds so exhausting. And I look at them going, how you feeling now? Like, what do you mean? I'm like, so you have nothing scheduled on your calendar. You go into work, you procrastinate, you don't know what you should be working on, you don't have any lists, you don't have anything scheduled, you end up putting out fires. How's that working out for you? From what I can tell, that's pretty exhausting. Not knowing how to use your time is one of the most exhausting things for your mind. Because guess what? Your mind is a problem-solving machine. And if it goes into work and it says, oh, I need to work on X, I need to work on Y, I need to work on Z, it's easy. Low stress, not exhausting, not burning a lot of energy. But you get to work and there's this big open block and you go, what am I going to do for the next 3 hours? Do I do this? Do I do that? What about this? What do I do? And all of a sudden, your mind is trying to figure out the solution when there's really no solution. You're burning a lot of energy and it's very exhausting and very tiresome. Trust me, I have done this and you need to try it. When you can go in and you can wake up in the morning and say, okay, 5 o'clock, I go to the gym. 5 to 6. Get back to my office, I meditate, cold plunge, check my email for 30 minutes, this call, that. It is so easy. You don't have to think. You've already done the thinking. You've already gone in and figured out what the highest priority items are for your day, and then you work around it. Now, one thing to be clear, you can schedule in open time or free time. So you might have on your calendar 2 hours for potential client meetings. We typically do that. So if you go out and look at over the next several weeks, you'll see every day a 2-hour block potential client meetings. Because we know client meetings are going to come up, and I know I need to meet with clients sometimes on short notice. So telling a client I am fully booked for the next 3 months, that's not an effective way to run a business. So you do schedule in those block times, but now all of a sudden, you're making sure your highest priority items are being taken care of first. So the way I do this is, it's all target driven. So I don't like starting people with yearly targets, because if it's not something you've done, it's very, very hard for most people to think out 12 months. If you try to tell people, think where you want to be, what you want to accomplish in 12 months, that's really hard. If you can do it, great. If not, let's do quarterly. So right now we're sitting in July. So what are some things in cybersecurity at your business that you would like to accomplish by August, by the end of August? So when September 1st rolls around, what are some areas that you would like to have in place? Some ideas might be, have a risk posture. If you don't have a risk posture in place, where you know what is or is not acceptable risk, your organization is going to struggle. If you don't go in and have some sort of security roadmap, you're also going to struggle. So those might be some objectives you want to accomplish. Then every month you say, okay, let me take these targets and break them down into 3 chunks. Because if I want to get this done in 3 months, what milestone is to get done in month 1, month 2, month 3? Once you have that, then you do weekly. And then you go in and you say, okay, what do I need to do this week? And then the weekly is where you go into your calendar. So if you go in, and this is across all areas, you want to get more healthy. You want to exercise every day. So you actually go into your calendar, and from 5 to 6 a.m. every morning, you go in and you put in exercise. That's now on your calendar. You also want to go in and meet with your boss every week. So this might be a placeholder because you don't know your boss's schedule, but you might go in and say, okay, from 12 to 2 on Wednesday, I'm going to hold that time to meet with my boss. And then, okay, if I need to get this done, I need to spend 30 minutes a day working on this security plan. I need to spend 30 minutes every day looking at, prioritizing, correlating all the vulnerabilities, updating my whiteboard so I can have this plan done in 3 months. Great. When is my most effective time for doing it? 10 o'clock. So great. I go in from 10 to 10:30 every single day, Monday through Friday, and I block out work on the cybersecurity project plan. And now you start going in and adding things to your calendar. And you start scheduling out, and your calendar starts to get full. Now, what I do is I go, okay, I need to stay in contact with my customers. So every day, I need 2 hours of time to work on my customers. So I schedule that from 2 to 4. Then I say I also need to work on reports and client deliverables for at least 2 hours. So I schedule that. So to me, I'm spending about 4 hours a day core business. 2 hours with customers, 2 hours with project deliverables. And then everything else, we start going around it. Now you might go, but Eric, you don't know when your clients are available. Exactly. So I have a system with my EA where she could move things, but she can't delete them. So for example, I scheduled out 10 to noon to work on client deliverables. Now, to be honest, whether I do that 10 to noon or 2 to 4 or 8 to 10 doesn't matter. That's something I'm doing with me, so I can move that, but she can't delete it. So if the only time a client can meet with me is at 10 o'clock, she can move that 10 to 12, but she has to put it somewhere on that day. It cannot be deleted. Now, what's going to happen when you do this is you'll get to the point where you run out of time in your day. And you're like, there's not enough time to do everything. And then here's what you have to do. Go back and say, okay, what's my highest priorities? The reality is I can't create time. The reality is I'm only willing to put 12 hours a day into work, life, everything else. So between this item and this item, which is more important? You got to start making priority choices. And then you start shifting things and changing things. Now, once again, if you've never done this, I'm throwing a lot at you. This is probably like a 2-day course that I'm condensing down into 30 minutes, where I'm giving you some really critical day in the life skills. It probably sounds almost overwhelming, like this is insane. Like I have to schedule everything and plan everything and do everything. But the reality is, once you start doing it, it's actually the opposite. You actually feel so much calmer and more relaxed. Because here's the reality. If you wake up every morning and you're in crisis mode, oh, I got to do this call, I got this report, I got this, and you don't know what has to be done, and you're not focused and aligned with your priorities, that is very stressful. That is why most people are so exhausted. So the reality is, being proactive and getting clear about what are your priorities, what needs to be done, and planning them out ahead. And then in the beginning, what I do is every day, I just look at the next day going, okay, is this aligned with my priorities? If not, let's readjust it. And after about a month, you'll be so clear on what your priorities are that this becomes so smooth. You're going to look up going, wow, this is so easy. I never realized I could accomplish so much in so little time. Because when you're deliberate about how you use your time as a Chief Information Security Officer, you get so much more done in less time. So start making a decision to change your life. Start making your life a priority. Start putting these steps into place and drop a note and let me know how they're working out for you. Until next time, have an amazing week. And remember, it's your life. You're in control. The more you control and manage your time, the more effective and efficient you'll be at accomplishing anything you desire.